The story kicked off in a bustling village market on a grand feast day, where a young, ragged beggar sat in a dark alley, desperately cramming dirty food scraps into his mouth like he hadn't eaten in weeks. Suddenly, a flying rock slammed directly into the back of his head with a heavy thud, knocking the breath out of him as a group of toxic townspeople began pelted him with stones, screaming that the filthy beggar was back again and stuffing his face like a total dog. Refusing to drop his precious scraps, the wild child scrambled to his feet and bolted down the alleyway while dodging a barrage of rocks, eventually spotting a bamboo steamer overflowing with fresh, piping hot bao buns at a nearby stall. His primal instincts immediately took over as his dirt-covered hand snatched a bao bun, but the enraged shopkeeper instantly caught him in the act, screaming at the punk before violently throwing him straight into the middle of a fancy restaurant floor. Up on the second-floor balcony, a distinguished old martial artist with long white hair and sharp red eyes casually sipping his drink watched the chaotic spectacle unfold with a curious hum as the restaurant staff confronted the intruder. The furious merchant began mercilessly stomping and kicking the helpless kid on the ground, yelling at the filthy beggar for daring to ruin their grand feast day. But despite taking a brutal, bone-breaking beating, our guy refused to surrender his loot, absorbing savage kicks to the face while continuing to greedily stuff the steamed bun into his mouth with muffled, desperate chewing sounds. Observing the beatdown from above, the old master noted in pure disbelief that the kid was still eating through all that brutal physical abuse, marveling at how his bones should have been completely shattered by now, yet he acted like the pain was absolutely nothing. The white-haired veteran turned to the server beside him and asked who that strange child was, to which she explained that he was just a local beggar kid who had been causing non-stop trouble around the market for a long time. As the beatdown raged on, a faint blue internal energy mysteriously radiated around the boy's body, prompting the old master to narrow his red eyes in deep suspicion, realizing there was definitely something strange about him and wondering if the kid had somehow learned martial arts. The aggressive local finally kicked the child out of the restaurant and slammed the heavy wooden gates shut, screaming that it was terrible luck to have a trash beggar ruin their feast day and ordering him to get the hell out of there. Lying face down in the dirt outside, the bruised kid grumbled to himself that of course beggars gather on a feast day, before slyly reaching into his ragged tunic to pull out another bao bun he had successfully stolen and protected, taking a fat bite and scoffing at those idiots. But just as he was enjoying his prize, a sudden sound startled him, making his eyes widen in complete shock as he turned around and spotted a giant, perfectly steamed bao bun sitting right behind him on the grass. Cautiously glancing left and right to make sure no one was watching, the young beggar reached out to grab the giant snack, only for a heavy black boot to violently crush both his hand and the bun straight into the dirt. Shocked and furious, the boy looked up to see the white-haired master towering over him, who coldly asked why he was so obsessed with eating. Instead of crying or fighting back, the feral kid completely ignored the foot crushing his fingers, leaned all the way down to the dirt, and aggressively licked the smashed bun crumbs right off the ground, causing the old master to nod in approval and declare that he was a true hungry beast. As the kid kept vacuuming up dirt-covered food, the master noted that anyone else would have lost consciousness from that level of pain long ago, while the boy looked up at the master's gilded sheath and realized in shock that this old guy was a high-level martial artist. Before the kid could react, the master suddenly kicked him backward onto his butt and asked why he did that, leaving the boy bewildered as he swallowed his food and asked what he meant. The old master bent down and demanded to know why he just let those townspeople beat him senseless, pointing out that a tough kid like him could have easily bitten them back and put up a real fight. Stuffing another bite into his mouth, the kid flatly explained that if he fought back they would have stolen his food, so enduring the physical beatdown was worth it just to keep eating, leading the master to realize in shock that while the child could endure pain, he absolutely could not endure hunger. The master burst into a wild laugh, praising the boy for having an insane rebel spirit, though the kid just stared back like a confused potato and asked what that even meant. Getting serious, the master demanded to know who taught him martial arts, but the kid blinked with wide eyes and asked what martial arts he was talking about. In a flash, the old man lunged down and grabbed the kid's arm, sending a wave of electric blue internal chi surging through his body to inspect his channels. Analyzing the child's body, the master observed that he had definitely never performed energy circulation, had never trained in martial arts, and had never consumed a rare elixir, yet he was naturally drawing in internal power entirely on his own. Staring at the kid's glowing core, the master realized in total disbelief that the boy's energy center was completely open, an op cheat code constitution that granted him ridiculous innate talent, but carried a fatal flaw. The master solemnly warned the child that because his energy center opened early, his internal power was constantly accumulating without control, meaning his body could explode at any moment, leaving him with only 5 years left to live. The kid stood there completely stunned, taking a long silent pause before his eyes bugged out and he asked if dying meant he wouldn't be able to eat food anymore. After a speechless silence from the master, the young beggar looked down at his trembling, dirt-covered fists in absolute despair, griping that he had never even been full once in his entire life, and shouting at the top of his lungs that before he died, he wanted to eat until he literally burst. The master chuckled at his insane priorities, asking if starving felt more unfair to him than actual death, before turning away and telling the kid that if he wanted to live, he needed to follow him right now. Scrambling after the old man down the mountain path, the boy anxiously asked if he was going to feed him, to which the master glibly replied that he would if he survived, before glaring back with glowing red eyes and warning him that as of today, all the pain he had ever known would seem like child's play. The master led him to the peak of a terrifyingly steep cliff top and bluntly ordered him to jump, causing the kid to lose his mind, yelling that falling from that height would instantly kill him. The master casually shrugged it off, stating he was going to die anyway even if he didn't jump, prompting the child to scream that he was a total liar who promised to save him. Unbothered, the old man remarked that he promised to save him but never said it would be easy, before brutally kicking the child straight off the edge of the cliff. Plunging down the sheer vertical rock wall, the boy let out a blood-curdling scream, but instead of giving up, he frantically slammed his bare fingers directly into the solid cliff face, clawing through the stone and scraping off skin until he miraculously managed to catch himself on a tiny ledge. Gasping and panting for air with bloody hands, the boy looked up to find the master casually standing above him with crossed arms, smugly stating that he survived, which sent the kid into a fiery rage as he screamed at the crazy old man to just kill him already if that was his goal. The master simply scoffed that if he were meant to die, he would have splattered on the ground just now, commanding him to scale the vertical cliff if he wanted to live. Gritting his teeth through unbearable agony, the kid let out a furious scream and dug his bloody nails into the rock face, forcefully scaling the mountain on sheer survival instinct alone. Later that night inside a dark mountain cave, the master gave the exhausted boy his official name, Gyo-ha, meaning to correct flaws, before explaining that because his energy center was overflowing, he had to constantly release internal power to prevent his body from detonating. When Gyo-ha asked how the hell he was supposed to release that energy, the master grinned menacingly and said it was simple, before winding up a massive punch that made the boy's eyes pop out in horror. The master brutally punched Gyo-ha across the cave, shouting that he just needed to move a lot and get beaten up a lot, sending the kid crashing into the dirt as he cursed that this hurt like absolute hell and that he would die if he took another hit. Giving him zero room to breathe, the master leaped into the air like a meteor, yelling at him not to think and slamming the boy back into the floor with explosive force. As Gyo-ha lay bleeding and battered on the ground, his eyes suddenly caught a plate of delicious beef jerky sitting nearby, causing his inner beast to react as he gasped for the beef jerky and desperately crawled toward it. Before his fingers could touch the meat, the old master swooped down with a terrifying strike, asking if he really wanted to eat it and telling him to survive if he wanted a single bite. Driven to absolute madness by hunger, Gyo-ha pushed past his physical limits, dodging the lethal blow and lunging directly at the master, sinking his teeth straight into the old man's arm with a desperate roar. Surprised by the vicious counterattack, the master yelled at the punk and flung the kid away, watching as Gyo-ha tumbled across the dirt, spat out a mouthful of blood, and dropped into a raw, primal fighting stance. Impressed by the bite mark on his arm, the master smiled proudly, realizing the boy possessed the ultimate weapon, an unyielding will to survive, while Gyo-ha glared back with blazing red determination and declared that he wanted to live. Accepting him as his true disciple, the master declared that from now on he would teach him how to survive, unleashing a ruthless, soul-crushing training regime that shattered mountains and pushed the young warrior to the brink of death every single day. In the pouring rain, as Gyo-ha lay collapsed in a crater, the master commanded him to get up, only for the bloody disciple to struggle to his feet with glowing eyes, gritting out that he wasn't dead yet and roaring that he was going to kill the old man. Smirking at his endless defiance, the master replied that if he wasn't dead then he better keep learning, as years of grueling hellish training in the wild passed by. Years later, a giant demonic bear let out an earth-shattering roar in the deep forest and charged, only for a fully grown, insanely muscular Gyo-ha to step up, clash directly with the beast's massive claw, and instantly obliterate the monster with a single broken fist strike that left the giant bear completely knocked out cold. Walking over to the defeated beast, the old master admitted that Gyo-ha had finally become somewhat useful, though he still had a long way to go. Standing tall with a shredded, scar-covered physique and a sharp, devastating glare, our hero looked back over his shoulder with an arrogant smirk, trash-talking his master and asking why he didn't teach him more, old man. Flashback memories rushed in as the old master continued explaining the true nature of Gyo-ha's insane cheat code body, revealing that because his energy center was wide open, he accumulated internal power just by simply breathing. The old man pointed out that the overflowing energy would naturally widen his fine meridians, making him the absolute perfect vessel to master external martial arts, a god-tier constitution that even the legendary Shaolin sect would covet. The master added that another prestigious faction, Wuding, would kill for a talent like his, explaining that there was actually more than just one energy center in the human body. He pointed upward, noting that if Wuding's core, the upper energy center, were to open, Gyo-ha would finally be able to completely control his wild internal power. Hearing those legendary names, the young disciple worried in his thoughts, wondering if elite Orthodox sects like Shaolin and Wuding would ever accept a dirty, unpolished monster like him. But the old master shook his head, declaring that lastly there was one final faction capable of handling him, and that was Kunlun. The old man flexed with absolute authority, boasting that when it came to training a terrifying beast like him, even Shaolin and Wuding couldn't dare compare to Kunlun, claiming that in all the world, only these three factions could save his life. The boy blinked and innocently asked if Kunlun hadn't already fallen into ruin, which instantly triggered the old man to erupt with an overwhelming, red aura of pure martial prowess. Blazing with godlike aura, the master fiercely declared that Kunlun had not fallen because he was still standing, boldly roaring that he was Kunlun and Kunlun was him. Back in the present at the mountain cave, the master took a quiet sip of tea while watching Gyo-ha aggressively devour a massive bowl of meat and rice, asking how the heavy iron weights felt on his limbs. Munching away with stuffed cheeks, our boy casually flexed and replied that he was still feeling fine. Watching him eat like a starved wild animal, the master marveled in his thoughts, wondering if the kid's wounds had already healed completely as the constant flow of energy strengthened his body and meridians. The old man noted that in terms of raw potential alone, Gyo-ha had already surpassed a peak master, but because the boy only knew real life-or-death combat, he had turned out a little bit strange. Breaking the silence, the master suddenly announced that he would be away for a while, making the young warrior stop chewing and ask what he meant. The master explained that he had some urgent business to take care of and was leaving the mountain for a bit, prompting the boy to ask if he was coming along too. The old man denied it, clarifying that it wasn't a place he could follow him to, but promised he would be back within 2 months. He added that Gyo-ha was not a child anymore and should easily be able to fend for himself, teasingly asking how long he expected his master to babysit him. Our guide dismissively waved his hand with a mouth full of rice, telling the old man not to worry because he could handle that much on his own. That blatant lack of respect caused an annoyed vein to pop on the master's forehead, as he hit the boy with a death glare so terrifying that the young martial artist choked on his food and scuttled backward in pure horror. The old master held his head with a heavy sigh, deeply regretting that he was so busy beating the kid during training that he completely forgot to teach him basic manners, wondering if he had beaten him a little too much. Shaking it off, the master asked if Gyo-ha could now channel his internal power through solo ascetic training alone. The boy hummed nervously with an awkward sweat drop, leading the master to offer some insane advice, telling him that if training got too tough, he should just roll off the cliff face a few times since his monster body wouldn't die that easily. The young warrior deadpanned back that rolling off a cliff was literally just falling to his death, but the master smugly told him to keep it in mind anyway, leaving the boy pouting in his thoughts about his grumpy old master. The next morning, Gyo-ha stared at his master's empty bedroll, complaining to himself that the old man could have at least said goodbye before sneaking off. Stretching his back until his bones popped, the rising star let out a deep breath, noticing the glowing blue chi surging in his lower abdomen and realizing that his internal power was already building up dangerously, meaning it was fatal if he skipped training for even a single day. Without hesitating, the fearless fighter leaped straight off the high cliff into midair, launching into a wild solo training session across the mountain canyon. He unleashed explosive fists and shattered massive boulders, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake before grabbing onto a vertical rock wall with one arm and pulling himself up with a heavy gasp. Hanging from the cliff edge, the young prodigy complained out loud that this solo grind was so boring, flicking pebbles at the mountain's side, and wondering what the hell he was even doing by himself every day. Slamming down onto the ground in a cloud of dust, he pondered if the old man would bring back a junior brother from his journey. But then a sudden realization hit him like a truck as his eyes widened, realizing he didn't actually need to wait around for the old man. The mastermind reasoned that if they were going to achieve the grand reconstruction of the Kunlun Sect, they definitely needed fresh disciples right now, figuring the old man would actually love the initiative. Dashing back inside the cave, he spotted a pile of secret martial arts manuals lying on the floor, deciding it was much safer to carry these precious texts with him. The young master quickly packed the ancient books into a cloth bundle, tying it securely across his shoulder and flexing his muscles, feeling fully prepared to hit the road. Hyped for his new mission, he began listing his recruitment goals, deciding that first he needed someone who could fight well, before glancing at the animal bones near the fire, and adding that it would be awesome if the new recruit was also a great cook. A traumatizing flashback flashed in his mind of the old man serving him a pitch-black bowl of soup and asking if it tasted killer, while young Gyo-ha gagged in terror, screaming that he was literally going to die. Shaking off the nightmare, the boy muttered that the old man had zero taste buds, concluding that a junior brother who excelled at both combat and cooking would be ideal, though he doubted he could find someone that perfect so easily. Suddenly, an even better idea popped into his head as he snapped his fingers, counting them off one by one. He held up one finger for a junior brother dedicated to sparring, a second finger for a junior brother dedicated strictly to cooking, and a third finger for a junior brother to handle Taoist scriptures since they were technically a Taoist school. Beaming with excitement, the ambitious senior brother realized that made 3 recruits in total, instantly daydreaming about his delusional future empire. In his wild fantasy, the cooking junior brother served him delicious meals, the scholar junior brother recited holy scriptures by a shrine, and the battle maniac junior brother pledged to give his all in daily sparring, while all 3 danced in circles around him happily chanting senior brother. Snapping back to reality with a mischievous laugh, the young master declared that he had no time to waste if he wanted to find all 3 of them, stomping his foot down and launching himself out of the cave entrance at neck-break speed. Soaring through the sky high above the mountain peaks, the fearless fighter let out a wild laugh as he looked down at the vast, unfamiliar lands and bustling towns below, grinning with absolute excitement as he declared it was time to go explore the outside world for the first time in a while. Arriving at a peaceful village hidden deep in the mountain valley, Gyo-ha marveled out loud at finding such a lively town in a place like this. As he strolled through the crowded market street with a cheerful smile, a sudden scent hit his nose, making him pause and sniff the air repeatedly. Tracing the mouth-watering aroma, his eyes locked onto a vibrant food stall selling skewers of candied fruit, causing him to drool so heavily that the nearby local kids backed away in absolute terror. Noticing his intense stare, the friendly old woman running the stall invited him to try one, but our guy awkwardly shook his head while humming in refusal. He dropped into a crouch right in front of the stall, continuously drooling while staring intently at the sweet treats until the shopkeeper scoffed, telling him to stop ruining her business and just take a skewer. The young warrior frantically waved his hands in polite refusal, insisting it was fine, but the old woman sternly handed it over anyway, claiming she was going to throw it out because it was old and telling him to stop arguing. Gratefully taking the gift, the boy thanked the grandmother and took a fat bite of the candied fruit, causing a literal flavor explosion in his mind as he declared it absolutely delicious. As he happily munched on his snack, 2 local kids watched him in confusion, whispering to each other whether he was a beggar. Hearing them, the generous martial artist turned around with a big smile, offering them his food and telling them to eat his too. Shortly after, the scene shifted to a local eatery, where Gyo-ha was casually devouring a massive mountain of meat and rice. The local villagers gathered around to watch the spectacle in pure awe, laughing amongst themselves that just watching the boy eat made them feel full. Wiping his mouth politely, the rising star thanked them, hoping he didn't take too much food, but the villagers warmly reassured him that they thoroughly enjoyed watching him eat. Just then, the old fruit vendor grandmother walked over and handed him a clean, neat robe, telling him to put it on so people wouldn't talk trash about his ragged look. The young disciple accepted the clothes with deep gratitude, promising to wear them right away. As the grandmother walked off, Gyo-ha overheard 2 local men nearby sighing in pity, gossiping about how terrible they felt for her since she had never done a bad deed in her entire life. Leaning over to their table, the boy asked if something bad had happened to her. The villagers solemnly explained that not long ago, one of her sons tragically died in an accident, leaving behind a massive fortune as her inheritance. However, local mountain bandits caught wind of the money and completely ambushed the transport, stealing every last coin before it could reach her. Shocked by the cruelty, our guy asked if that was all, to which the villager revealed an even worse tragedy. The man explained that the grandmother had another son who, upon hearing about the stolen money, recklessly rushed off to the bandit fortress all on his own 10 days ago to get it back, and no one had heard from him since. Getting dead serious, the young warrior asked if the mountain fortress was far from town. The villager panicked, warning him that it wasn't far, but begging him not to do anything foolish because he would only end up dying in vain. Ignoring the warning, the fearless fighter smoothly ripped off his upper shirt in one badass motion, revealing an insanely shredded, scar-covered Giga-Chad physique radiating with raw chi that left the villagers completely speechless. Slipping into the grandmother's gift robe, the lone wolf looked down with cold eyes, asking where those trash bandits were located. As he made his way to the hideout, a flashback played of his master delivering a lesson on bandit morality inside their mountain cave. The old man had explained that everything in the world had its own purpose, including bandits and pirates, leaving young Gyo-ha confused with a cheek full of food. The master clarified that while what bandits do is wrong, mountains and seas weren't dangerous solely because of criminals, but also because of wild beasts. The boy nodded in understanding, prompting the master to elaborate that because darkness fell quickly in the wild, bandits collected tolls under the guise of offering protection from beasts. The old man noted that while this was normally a job for the government, officials often turned a blind eye or made deals with bandits because they couldn't oversee every remote trail, though any group that crossed the line would face complete subjugation. Naively, young Gyo-ha had asked if he should just hand over his money without fighting if he encountered bandits, making the master facepalm in frustration. The old man clarified that he wasn't saying bandits were good people, telling his disciple to think twice before needlessly killing them because collecting a toll wasn't a crime deserving death. He advised the boy to just beat them up, break an arm or leg if necessary, and force them to surrender. When the young disciple asked if he should spare them even if they tried to kill him, the master's eyes flared red with terrifying killer intent as he declared no, ordering the boy to kill them instantly if they had murder in their hearts, reminding him that anyone who seeks to kill must be prepared to die themselves. Back in the present, the monster disciple arrived at the wooden gates of the bandit mountain fortress, landing casually in front of two bandit guards. The guards blinked in utter shock, demanding to know who the hell he was, to which our hero nonchalantly asked if this was the mountain fortress. When the guards stared at him in confusion, the boy rubbed his neck, muttering that it didn't really matter since he could just look somewhere else if he had the wrong place. Annoyed by his relaxed attitude, one bandit guard grabbed Gyo-ha's lapels, yelling about what this punk was babbling about and trying to throw him over his shoulder. But the young warrior stood completely rooted to the spot like an unmovable iron mountain, leaving the guard sweating in pure shock as he realized the kid wouldn't budge a single inch. A second bandit stepped up, grabbing the boy's collar and mocking him for having a half-baked hero complex, threatening that if he left his clothes and beat it, they would let him live. Before the fraud could finish his threat, Gyo-ha reached out and clamped his hand onto the bandit's wrist with an iron grip. As the bandit gasped in confusion, the young master squeezed with superhuman strength, crushing the man's wrist bones until he dropped to his knees, screaming in pure agony. Seeing his buddy get wrecked, the first bandit drew a massive broadsword and swung it down with full lethal intent directly at the boy's head. Without even flinching, the Taoist fighter raised two fingers and caught the razor-sharp steel blade midair with zero effort, stopping the full-force strike dead in its tracks. Looking up with a sinister, icy glare, the rising star smirked, confirming that these scumbags were indeed the ones who crossed the line. An explosive shockwave ripped through the fortress as Gyo-ha launched into a one-man army assault, sending bandits flying through the air with agonizing screams as he pulverized their forces. In a matter of seconds, the remaining bandits dropped their weapons, falling to their knees and trembling in uncontrollable terror. Walking calmly through the sea of broken bodies, the boy casually reassured them that he wouldn't kill them since he was a disciple of the peaceful Taoist school, before asking where their boss was hiding. Getting no response from the traumatized survivors, he looked over at the fortress wall and spotted the bandit boss's legs dangling out of a crater in the wooden gate, sweat dropping as he realized he had already knocked the boss unconscious without even noticing. Realizing he still needed to fulfill his master's lesson, he turned back to the remaining bandits, raising a finger and politely informing them that everyone just needed to take one hit each. Before the terrified bandits could run, the young master blitzed forward, landing a devastating sweep kick that sent the rest of the gang airborne with agonizing groans. Suddenly realizing his massive mistake, the boy gasped in panic, yelling about the grandmother's youngest son. He held his head in distress, looking around at the sea of knocked-out bandits and sighing over who he was supposed to ask now. Relying on his sharp senses, he sniffed the air, following a faint scent through the compound until he reached a heavy iron dungeon door. Pushing the door open, he peered into the dark prison cell and spotted a cage filled with frightened, kidnapped women shaking in the dark. Staring at the horrific scene, the young warrior's eyes glowed with intense, dangerous fury as he coldly muttered to look at these absolute scumbags. Standing inside the dark dungeon, Gyo-ha shattered the wooden cell bars with his bare hands, freeing the trembling captives and announcing with a bright, heroic smile that it was safe now. Looking over the freed women, he asked if any of them knew a man named Jang No-sam, but the captives just stared back in silent confusion. Suddenly, a battered man crawling on the floor nearby groaningly announced that he was Jang No-sam, making our boy turn around in shock and scream what in utter disbelief. Limping forward on a heavily sprained leg, the bruised man confirmed his identity once again, leaving the young master completely dumbfounded as he yelled what a second time. Points at the limping guy, the rising star shouted that he wasn't looking for him, but rather the sugar candy grandmother's youngest son. When the man awkwardly scratched his head and revealed that he was indeed that son, Gyo-ha lost his mind, screaming in shock as he realized this pathetic bandit was actually Jang No-sam. Veins bulged on the young warrior's arm as he clenched his fist in pure fury, glaring with red eyes and grumbling that this jerk had no idea how worried his poor mother was. As he wound up a massive fist to punch the guy right in the face, one of the rescued women quickly intervened, revealing that Brother No-sam had actually taken care of all of them. Another woman chimed in, explaining that he was held captive by the bandits solely because of his incredible talents. Freezing his fist an inch from the man's sweating face, Gyo-ha lowered his arm in confusion and asked what was going on. Summarizing the story, the boy asked if he had come to reclaim his family inheritance, almost died, and was then threatened by the bandit boss because of his skills. Jang No-sam nervously confirmed it, explaining that he refused at first, but agreed to become a bandit in exchange for the boss treating the kidnapped women better. Pointing a finger at him, the young disciple clarified if that meant he didn't actually commit any banditry, to which the man softly nodded yes. Stroking his chin in deep thought, our hero noted that a bandit who didn't commit any banditry was bizarre, asking just how amazing his talent actually was. Jang No-sam blushed modestly, mentioning that he was pretty fast with math calculations, but the rescued women enthusiastically added that he wasn't just good at math, he was also a master chef. Hearing the word cooking, Gyo-ha's eyes bugged out of his head as the women praised No-sam, boasting that there was nothing he couldn't do and that he was even an amazing singer. Realizing he had accidentally stumbled upon the ultimate recruit for his new sect, the young master dropped to his knees in pure bliss, covering his face and groaning in utter joy. Looking back at the sea of unconscious bandits groaning on the ground, the boy pondered if he should teach those scumbags another lesson, but the rescued women politely declined, thanking him for everything. Bowing deeply in gratitude, Jang No-sam thanked him as well, prompting the young warrior to smile brightly and suggest they all head back home. That night under the moonlight, the villagers in the lower town gathered around the worried fruit vendor grandmother, begging her to rest because she was ruining her health sitting outside all night. Another villager offered to take over the watch, but suddenly gasped in shock, pointing down the dark forest path and yelling for everyone to look. Down the trail, Gyo-ha walked triumphantly with the rescued captives, making the villagers gasp in awe as they recognized the young man from earlier accompanied by Jang No-sam carrying his chest of recovered gold. Seeing his mother sitting on the rock, No-sam broke into tears, yelling "Mother" as he ran forward. But the moment he reached her, the furious grandmother began wildly punching and hitting her son, screaming at the idiot for being so reckless and asking if he had any idea where he went. Taking the beatdown with a smile, No-sam held up the heavy chest, apologizing to his mother and explaining that he successfully reclaimed his brother's inheritance. The mother snapped that money didn't matter, but her eyes quickly caught his limping leg, asking what happened to him. The son rubbed his head awkwardly, lying that he just sprained it a bit, making the mother yell back that his foot was definitely sprained by those bandit bastards, leaving both No-sam and Gyo-ha laughing awkwardly. Walking over to our guy, the old grandmother gently held his hands, thanking him with deep emotion. The young master smiled, telling her not to mention it since he was just paying her back for the delicious sugar candy skewer. Looking down at the cut and torn robe he was wearing, the boy apologized for ruining the gift she gave him, but the grandmother warmly smiled, reassuring him that she had plenty of clothes and would weave him a brand new set tomorrow. A local villager agreed, shouting that their grand benefactor couldn't be walking around in hand-me-downs, offering his own spare fabric for the new outfit. When a younger villager complained that his brother wouldn't give him that fabric when he asked earlier, the older villager scolded him, asking if he was really comparing himself to their savior, sending the whole crowd into fits of happy laughter. Noticing the rescued women standing quietly in the back, the grandmother immediately took charge, scolding the villagers for keeping their guests standing outside all night when they hadn't washed or eaten properly. She ordered a villager named Guak to slaughter 3 chickens for dinner, but Guak happily replied that 3 chickens weren't enough for guests and insisted on slaughtering a pig as well. Turning to the women, the grandmother called them inside, making them run over happily as No Sam smiled at Gyo-ha, bragging that his mother was a true heroine. Moments later, a massive feast commenced, with our boy vacuuming up piles of pork, chicken, and rice, stacking empty bowls to the ceiling while the amazed villagers laughed that watching him eat made them feel full. Setting down a fresh, steaming bowl of gourmet chicken soup, No Sam told him to ask for more whenever he wanted, making the young warrior stuff another dumpling into his cheek and thank him politely. The next morning, the grandmother noticed her son still limping badly, telling the villagers that she heard a highly skilled wandering herb gatherer had arrived in the upper village, and that she would bring him over immediately. Shortly after, an old wandering healer with white hair and a headband sat on a wooden bench, expertly wrapping a tight bandage around No Sam's swollen ankle, grumbling that if he had been even a little later, it would have been a complete disaster. When No Sam nervously asked if it was really that bad, the herb gatherer glared up with sharp eyes, asking if he didn't trust a skilled healer. As the old man tightened the bandage, No Sam groaned in pain, prompting the healer to turn to the rescued women and order them to line up one by one for an examination. When No Sam asked how much they owed him for the treatment, the herb gatherer waved his hand dismissively, stating he didn't want money, but instead wanted to examine the body of the young kid sitting nearby. Pointing a finger directly at Gyo-ha, the healer made the boy blink in confusion as our guy smirked, claiming he was perfectly fine. Looking back with cold, piercing eyes, the old healer dropped a bombshell, calmly stating he knew the kid felt fine, but revealing that based on his body's condition, the boy should have been dead a long time ago, leaving our hero frozen in absolute terrifying shock. Instead of panicking, the young warrior blinked in surprise and burst out laughing, asking how the grandpa knew since his own old man had figured out the exact same thing just by touching him. The healer stroked his beard in thought, surprised that someone else could diagnose his condition through touch alone. Our guy casually stretched, chuckling that his master was a cranky old man who instructed him to use his body constantly by getting hit a lot and moving around a lot. The healer nodded in understanding, realizing that the master was forcing him to burn off his surging internal power through sheer physical exertion, admitting out loud that his master was clearly no ordinary person. The boy chuckled in agreement, telling him that was an understatement. Off to the side, No Sam wiped sweat from his forehead in confusion, wondering what the hell these two were blabbering about. The healer then held out his hand, politely asking if he could examine Gyo-ha's body, prompting the young disciple to pause before making a selfless counteroffer. Pointing a finger with a bright smile, our hero asked if the healer could check on the rest of the villagers as well. The old man scoffed playfully, calling him a brat and revealing that he was already planning to treat the villagers from the start, making the young master laugh happily and thank him. Later that night inside a private room, the healer pressed his hands against Gyo-ha's bare torso, feeling his unreal muscle density and asking in total shock if he was descended from a bear or a tiger. The boy tilted his head, naively replying that he had no idea. Inspecting the glowing blue chi pulsating beneath the boy's skin, the healer marveled that his skin was thick like a bear's, and his muscle fibers possessed the resilience of a wild tiger. The rising star smirked, asking if that was a compliment, to which the healer deadpanned that it meant he was a freak who could beat a bear to death with his bare hands. The old man then asked how old he was, and when Gyo-ha casually mentioned he was probably around 15 years old, both the healer and No Sam screamed in absolute horror. Grabbing the boy's wrist to check his pulse, the healer asked if his energy center had been open like this since birth, to which the orphan replied that he wasn't sure. The healer solemnly noted that meeting his master was absolute heavenly luck, sternly warning the boy never to show his true body to anyone else, because if people saw his abnormal condition, they would try to dissect him alive. Reaching into his pouch, the healer handed over a wooden plaque engraved with the name Sun Yuijong. As Gyo-ha inspected the token, the healer explained that if he ever showed it to the Continental Merchant Guild, they would give him his exact location, urging the boy to seek him out whenever necessary since regular physicians couldn't handle a body like his. Walking toward the door, the healer noted that he was fascinated by his growth and told him to visit anytime, especially considering he was still in his growth phase. Our boy offered to see him off, but the old man declined, boasting that he wasn't that old yet before vanishing into thin air in a burst of speed. Running outside, Gyo-ha and No Sam watched in awe as the old man leaped across distant rooftops and treetops like a phantom, disappearing into the night as the boy waved goodbye. Shocked by the display, No Sam gasped that the old man was a high-level martial artist. Looking down at the wooden token, the young master read the name out loud, making No Sam freeze in horror before screaming at the top of his lungs that the old guy was the legendary medicine Saint Sun Yuijong. Grabbing the boy's arm in high-energy excitement, No Sam yelled that he was one of the 3 great divine physicians in the world, dancing around and cheering that it was no wonder his broken ankle had healed completely in just one day. Looking at the plaque thoughtfully, our guy smirked, muttering that if the guy was that famous, he probably should have challenged him to a fight. The next morning, dressed in his brand new robes, the young warrior bowed to the grandmother and thanked her warmly. The mother and No-Sam smiled, insisting that they were the ones who owed him everything, stating that without the young hero, they would have been in massive trouble. The boy laughed bashfully, saying it was no big deal, but the grandmother suddenly got serious, asking if she could ask a shameless favor. When the boy enthusiastically agreed, the grandmother pointed right at her son, asking if he could take No-Sam along with him on his journey. No-Sam freaked out, asking his mother why she was bringing this up out of nowhere, arguing that if he left, she would be left all alone. But the mother glared at him, declaring that she had lived just fine on her own and had zero intention of cleaning up after him ever again. When No-Sam stammered in shock, she looked out over the village, explaining that their town was far too small for his administrative and cooking talents to go to waste, urging him to go explore the wider world. She even told Gyo-ha that if her son turned out to be useless, he could just throw him away. No-Sam lost his mind, screaming if she knew how young this kid was, but the mother shut him down, yelling that age didn't matter before dropping to her knees and bowing her head directly to the dirt, begging the young master to accept her request. Both boys screamed in panic, with Gyo-ha sighing in defeat and agreeing to take him along. No-Sam gasped in disbelief as the young master clarified that since he was only out on a temporary trip, he couldn't stay with him forever. Before No-Sam could respond, wham! The boy tossed a massive travel bag onto his back, knocking the wind out of the new recruit as Gyo-ha asked if they were ready to go. As they marched down the main street, all the villagers and rescued women lined up on both sides, bowing deeply in gratitude to their savior. Walking behind him, No-Sam smiled warmly, reflecting that age really didn't matter when it came to a true hero, realizing he was witnessing the birth of a legend. Later on the mountain trail, No-Sam was panting and gasping for breath, desperately yelling for the young nobleman to wait up. Up ahead, Gyo-ha casually flipped upside down on a rock, doing a handstand before asking what was up. No-Sam asked where they were heading, prompting the boy to spring up, tie his upper robe around his waist, and flex his shredded physique as he declared he was going to find his new junior brother. A bit confused, No-Sam asked where this junior brother was, so the young master clarified that he meant he was going to go find someone to make into his junior brother. When No-Sam asked why not a disciple, the boy laughed, asking how he could have a disciple at his age. Realizing the crazy logic, No-Sam asked how he planned on choosing a junior brother, to which the fearless fighter casually shrugged that he had no idea. No-Sam screamed what in absolute terror, leading the battle maniac to crack his knuckles with a terrifying smirk, declaring that he would simply fight everyone he met first to test if they were worthy of becoming his junior brother, leaving his poor new companion in utter sweaty despair.